Welcome to the manifestation of a new year. Are you guys ready? My wife and my son, Carl, you ready to start calling this 2025?
Oh,
I'm ready to manifest.
me too. Do it.
All right, so we have something special for you. We are going to be talking about the force of favor, which is a supernatural spiritual force that comes into your life that produces an attraction factor that actually causes you to begin to conceive the purposes of God in a fresh way that actually align with what God wants to do through you. I always say favor is about assignments more than it's about charisma or personal, promotion. No one in the Bible ever had favor given to them unless they had an assignment that went with it. So what you're really asking for is an assignment from God. And one of the powers of being prepared for an assignment is this next level living, your 30-day devotional. To taking your mountain, finding your assignment and living it. And we have, what do we have? We have 30 days worth of 30 thought conditioners, ideas, powerful proverbs that have come out of 40 years of observation, or 30 years at this point, reading and studying and living with people, doing destiny. And so we're going to provide this for you. I want you to know where I'm reading from, because you can get a hold of this at lancewallnau.com/New Year. While you're listening to it, if you go, I wish I had that, go to lancewallnau.com/New Year and get it. 800-910-6349, and we'll send the 4 CDs on favor with it.
How did they get it? What do they have to do?
All you got to do is go to the just website or call. That's
You
right.
don't have to give a donation?
Of any amount?
Your gift of any amount.
Any amount.
Any amount.
Any amount.
We just trust the generosity of people, and if they don't have a lot, then start here. If you have nothing, go ahead and grab it anyway. Because, but put it to work, because it'll work if you work it. We're on
Plan to work the plan.
day 15 on this great New Year's period of time, beginning of the 2025.
My favorite.
Carl, you picked this one.
Yep.
And I like the challenge here. So why don't you go ahead and start with it?
God.
Yeah, made a good choice on this one. New year, new me. What does that mean? For a lot of us, it means we're going to be trying to have new habits, new tactics to approaching different things. But also, what it means is that we need to get rid of the things that might be holding us back. What got you here won't get you there. So that brings us to day 15, pruning. Pruning makes you feel like you lost something valuable. The truth is that pruning empowers you for increase you would had never had without cutting something off. You know that verse from Romans 12, verse 12? Be not conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Conforming is pressure from the world forming you from the outside in. Transformation, however, is pressure forming you through the word from the inside out. Dead air.
Annabelle, why don't you read the next part?
Dead air, Carl. What if there
Any
are
comments, by the way, on this? I mean, what do you think about that?
I think it's hard. Pruning is tough, man. I've been pruning my house because, sometimes you really have too much of everything, and that's me. I have too much of everything. So, and then you put it out, and then you go to give it away. You go, I think I'm gonna keep this.
You put this item.
I'm gonna take
out,
this
you take
back.
this item.
I'm gonna give that away. But I really did give away a lot, and I know that it's important. It's just not over. I can't do it as quickly as some people. Joy, our daughter, is so good at pruning. She used to send out bag after bag out of her bedroom all growing up. I go, give me that bag. Because there was so much good stuff in it. Not that we would keep it, but I would redirect it to other people and never throw it away. She just said, take care of it. Get it out of here.
My wife goes by. We went to church the other week, and we went by a chandelier on a driveway.
Look, curbside acquisitions are
And I said,
important.
no, because we were running late for church. She goes, I just want to pull over. I go, no, we'll get it on the way home.
I know it wasn't going to be for me. It's just that it looked perfectly good. And somebody got it because it was gone when we came back. But sometimes some of the most beautiful things are on the curb. And that's fine. Look, furnishing families, we give away all kinds of furnishings. And the beautiful thing is that we repurpose or upcycle. So many people don't have anything or don't have what they need. And we help them get it, a functioning, flourishing home.
Well, honey, on that note, why don't you go ahead and give us conforming is pressure.
Conforming is pressure from the world forming you from the outside in, and transformation is pressure forming you through the word from the inside out. And that's a really process. That's a huge process event right there. But what if there are areas we've been conformed into and didn't even know it? Fear too much, the opinion of man, need to look like a success. Remember that time?
What?
Remember that time you were driving over to that new client and we had a clunk mobile and you had to park a few blocks away in case he saw what you were driving?
Yeah.
Making it sound like this one time.
Oh, it was just so funny though.
It was a season.
Well, that was after we moved to Rhode Island.
Yeah. But I mean, it's just
And,
funny. Sometimes
I had a great car, Buick Century, and the transmission went out. And the transmission goes out on it. And it was a really cool car, but it was going to cost me $2,500 in order to. And I went to work, not in the oil business anymore, making all that money. I'm working on staff at a local church for $25,000 a year.
And what did your dad tell you?
$500 a week. And my dad told me before I left his company, oil company, he said, "You're going to be poor as a church mouse." He was just putting a curse on
What
me.
was the other thing he said about rubbing two pieces of straw? He was doing Pharaoh's curses.
He didn't, yeah, you'll be making bricks without straw.
Oh, yeah, that's what
He
it
would
was.
say biblical quotes like word curses.
How did we get those?
I don't know. It's probably had to break the Masonic vows off of him. He had Old Testament in him from the Masons, I think. But it was tough, man. So anyway, I didn't want to tell him about my transmission. My car went out, and I couldn't fix it because it's $2,500 on top of $2,000 I needed for tax, which was amazing back then. You make $25,000, you owe $2,000 to the government. So I was tithing and giving, and we were a young couple. It was very tough. Anyway, I'm in ministry, believing God's going to provide. I'm practicing everything that we practice and preach now. But I can remember without my car, I didn't have a car, and a guy named Paul DeChico in my church, he had a Rambler that he gave me for $1 that would get me by till the car came that I needed. I'll never forget. He was coming down the altar. I said, "I'm believing God for a car." And then he's walking up and he feels like God told him to give me his car for $1. I said, "I'm believing for a new car." And then he turned around and went back. I said, "Paul, where are you going?" He goes, "Well, I got a car, but it's not new." I go, "I'm going to take what I can get and believe for the increase." So he gave me, I needed a vehicle. So I'm driving Paul's car and it had a hole this big next to the accelerator.
Your foot goes.
So when it rained, all the water came in through the floor and my feet got wet. So anyway, so I got a deal with the church. I said, "Do you mind if I consult in my free time?" Because I used to do consulting. They said, "Yeah, okay." And so I picked up a client in Providence, who was a chiropractor, and he wanted me to come in and do some consulting with him. But I deliberately, I realized I can't pull up outside the guy's, practice driving like Jed Clampett, or he's going to think I'm not really a serious consultant. So I parked blocks away. That's what my wife is reminding me now. But here's the funny thing. I wouldn't tell my dad. My dad calls me up and he said, "How you doing, son?" "Oh, good, Dad." "Yeah, how's the car?" "Oh, well, I had a few problems with it." "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, the transmission. How much is it going to cost?" $2,500. "Well, you driving it?" "Well, not right now. I got another car I'm driving." "Oh, another car? Where'd that come from?" "Well, somebody let me loan me." Well, actually, they gave me their car. He goes, "Oh, that was generous of them." I go, well, I wanted to change the subject because I didn't want him to know. I couldn't afford to fix my car, and I'm driving a clunk with a hole in the floor. He said, "The reason I'm calling is, the good Lord gave me a dream the other night and told me you need a car." Now imagine this. I'm trying to hide it from my father. And my father calls me and says, "Do you need a car?" And I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I do." He said, "Well, I thought so. Why don't you and Annabelle come down and I'm not going to go crazy on this, but I'm going to maybe get you a good used car. And maybe $5,000 or $6,000, I'm thinking. That's what I'm going to spend, and we'll get you a car." It was around Christmas, I think. It was a great Christmas present that year. So we go down to Philadelphia, and we looked at a Dodge, we looked at used cars, but then we saw a Toyota Camry. We wanted to get a used one, as I recall. But the new one was like $16,000, but $17,000 with all the bells and whistles. And God moved on my dad to buy me a brand new Toyota Camry.
And the bumper-to-bumper
Insurance.
and extra. Because here's what happened.
That car.
Here's what happened was I had just had my car totaled. Remember the 69 Olds Cutlass? convertible. I know I had soul ties to that car, but anyway, when it got totaled, it was very difficult. But the insurance paid us a ton of money because it was a classic, and we tithed off of it. And what happened was if you do the math with God, with your tithing and your giving, it'll always be so sharp, so accurate. And so whatever the price tag, which I can't remember the exact number right now, but it was in the $19,000 range with the extra warranty.
All the coverage.
And, the tithe off of the return off of the other one was 10%. It was just amazing. To us at the time, we knew God is so real. And we always grew in our faith for giving because he showed up so strong in giving. So you guys follow your instincts with giving, especially when you get going. Because at first it might seem like I can't afford to give, but really you can't afford not to give, because the more you give, God shows up. He shows up in your money so big that you just have to say something.
It does surprise you. But the reason why we went here is, it's about being conformed to the world.
Yeah.
And you see, I was fearing too much the opinion of man, but I knew that how man thinks. I knew I couldn't show up with a clunk. I didn't want my dad to hear about my failure, about my problem. And God went to my father and told him about it.
In a dream.
In a dream.
Sleeping.
It was one of my dad's first encounters with God. He said, I just think God told me I'm supposed to get you a car. And I thought, how amazing. I'm trying to hide it from my dad, and God reveals it.
See, his dad was really successful oil man, and he wanted Lance to follow in his footsteps. So when we went towards ministry, he couldn't understand.
I'm in the oil business. I'm in the oil business still.
Yes.
Then one day the pruning comes. 1 minute left. Why would God do this? Well, maybe he didn't do it. His love never fails, but maybe love is not rescuing you just yet because he's letting you get free from the baggage you used to conform to. Maybe God's letting you shed a couple of pounds of that conformity that you used to do so that you can stand on your own. God's releasing the hidden man on the inside of you. You're pruned, but if you look closely, there's an authenticity coming with that new look you've got. There's a real you coming out of the stuff. Soon the foliage is forming, and it's twice as dense, more copious in fruit. God pruned away layers of what you thought you needed almost to look right. And God took it away so that you could bring forth something else on the inside. And then the manifestation of what's around you is even greater than what you had before, very often, because nature will clothe itself in a reflection of what you're at on the inside. And so when God takes you up another level, for a moment you feel vulnerable. It's like probably a turtle or a shell, or so it's probably in nature. There's those illustrations of having to find the new house because you've gotten larger, but you'll be enlarged and increased. Talking about this, I got my 30-day devotional here, Next Level Living. What I'm reading from, if you want to get a copy of it, we'll give it to you for your gift of any amount. Just call 800-910-6349. We got 30 of these principles. I'm even going to throw in my 4 CDs on El Favor, the force of favor, and that's honey, because one day I realized that the stickiness factor was what was a characteristic of favor that I was thinking about. It's how sometimes when I'm thinking about someone to hire or someone to work with, somebody comes up in my mind. Why do they stick out? Why do they stand out? And I realized later that honey makes you sticky, you know? And with God's favor is on you, it's like honey, is that it creates a sticking impression. People remember you. Something about you kind of like stays with them. But anyway, Annabelle, it's the new year. Do you have any sense of what the Lord's been speaking to you about the new year?
Well, I think there's a lot of surprise and about letting go of so many things. It's interesting that it makes space. We were even talking about some other thing. Carl's showing me pruning. But even in furnishing families, there's a lot of changes happening, and we're open. We're praying more, and we don't know everything. That's what's so cool. When you really don't know everything and you're asking the Lord, you have to listen more and talk less.
Yeah, so Annabelle has a nonprofit that takes care of single moms for the most part, and some dads that don't have furniture in Fort Worth and in Dallas. And they have warehouses where they provide furniture for families, and started with beds, and it's gotten into fully furnishing apartments for people that are poverty-stricken. It's a beautiful kind of it's Christmas every day with you guys.
It is. It's anyway, you say like, what do we have on the horizon? Well, you know what? I think as a company of people in our little company ministry, Furnishing Families, you know, we're praying more as a team, and we're really asking. So, I mean, what do we have? We have a blank canvas. I think it's cool.
Carl, what have you got as your thoughts for the year?
We do not rise to the level of our goals and aspirations. We fall to the levels of our systems. So for this new year, there's going to be new systems in place. There's going to be new means to get to those ends that we aspire to.
New systems. So what would that be for somebody that, say, wants to make more money or wants to get more in shape? What do they need to do?
They need to assess where they currently are. They need to beacon the areas of possible improvement. They need to confirm for themselves why it is that they want to set out this plan for themselves. They need to determine the plot points on how to get there. Then they need to execute on those actions.
That sounds concise. Sounds good, like coaching content.
Have you been doing this?
I have.
Have you been trimming down?
Well, yeah, a little bit. One little thing that I started doing is just going for walks after eating. It helps kickstart the metabolism and some other stuff going on inside of the body, which is really nice. And it helps me stay energized because a body in motion is likely to stay in motion. That's thermodynamics. Anyway, that's neither here nor there because we're here to talk about
walks after eating. Well, now my Dr. Jordan Rubin, you know, he's always giving me drink warm water, fill your belly up with a warm liquid before you eat because your stomach then will feel satiated and you won't eat as much. And then when you eat, start with the proteins, not with the carbs. Do the proteins first. It's like, few little tips like that go a long way.
It's so the systems. Again, it's not the goals or aspirations that you have set for yourself. It's the systems that you have in place.
All right. Well, I have a question for you. We're going to go to we're going to go to Judas.
Oh,
Day 29. Why Judas, you ask? Well, Judas is an interesting insight to start the year off with. You see, this is a conundrum to me. The question is, there's so... You know, people are always upset about, right now, the thing I'm always running into in my social media world is Christians that are freaking out over Christians that are in some hot water scandals. They did something 20 years ago. They did something 15 years ago. They did something 25 yeare ago. And it's like, well, I don't want to get everybody mad at me, but it's like, what? They all freak out. Like, where are they at now? How are they doing? How's their marriage, their ministry life? Doesn't matter. We got the goods on something that happened years ago. Or there's other scandals going on. So you got whole ministries now. You got let's say a whole business, a cottage industry is on waiting for and predicting the fall and the embarrassing tabloid and the incident that comes out. It's a weird thing. But it kind of goes to the subject of Judas. Not in the sense that, as you can hear, I'm more sympathetic to the victims of all this scrutiny than I, you know, I'm not sympathetic with all the mob chasing these ministries down and haranguing them and harassing them for something that happened 20 years ago. Send your hate mail to me later. But I mean, it's just like, it's like so weird to have to go through that. The left just went through a whole era of woke and cancel culture, and now it's coming around to the charismatic community. Now they're in a woke cancel culture of their own. Don't get mad at me. I'm just telling you. The question is, Judas betrayed Jesus, but who hired Judas to be in charge of the money?
Jeez.
I mean, think about this. Just think about this. So don't freak out till you hear my whole message today. You got 6 minutes.
Canceled.
Who hired Judas to be the treasurer of the ministry? Judas stole, but Jesus hired the guy. Did he not know the guy had a proclivity? So Jesus, of course, hired Judas. Now think. Jesus gave an opportunity for a greedy man to handle his money. Didn't he know that Judas had a problem with money? Certainly. Which makes for two important discoveries that'll put the fear of God on you. One, the area of gifting is the area of temptation. Whatever you're gifted to do is the area you're going to be tempted in. Secondly, God will give you responsibility and opportunity in the area of your gifting in spite of your vulnerability or your weakness. He'll give you the opportunity. Your job is to know your strength, because it's a great concept here. Any strength overextended becomes your greatest weakness. You're good with money, your problem might be handling generosity, because you'll have money, but you could also be a thief. Why does God do this? Does God want to set you up to fail? Actually, he's setting you up to succeed. The only way you can break through a weakness is to face it and overcome it. To break off the iniquity, you have to face the iniquity. To really sanctify the gift, you have to deal with the serpent that is hidden in the staff. Remember Moses picked up the staff and it was a serpent in it? You have to be able to handle the authority and be able to deal with the serpent that comes with it. You have to manage it. So God doesn't tempt us, yet the Spirit drove Jesus into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. Well, the Bible says God doesn't tempt you. Well, God drove Jesus into the wilderness to get tempted. Why? Because meeting the tempter seems to be a rite of passage before your promotion. Did the Father want the Son to fail? Of course not. He wanted the Son to be tested and qualified in order to drive the enemy out. Maybe you and I are tempted most in the area we are called to drive out the devil. Look at the thing you struggle with now and consider if it isn't a spirit somehow associated with the territory you're called to occupy. It's just a thought, it's an idea, that Jesus meets the ruler of this world because he was about to cast the ruler out. You meet the enemy at the next level you're about to go into to keep you from getting into that level. Sometimes we go around in circles for years without going, boom, into that next level. Sometimes our children end up taking out the enemy we never took out, and they go up there. Look at the thing you struggle with now and consider if it isn't somehow associated with territory you're called to occupy. Judas had a gift for money, and therefore he had to overcome a spirit of greed. A strong leader may struggle with control, whereas a great persuader may have to deal with the power of manipulation. A charismatic, good-looking, or influential individual needs to be careful about the power to seduce. Temptation reveals weaknesses, and owning a weakness is one way you prune yourself to become more authentic. Think about that. We talked about pruning in the last episode. If you can own the weakness, the tendency to manipulate with words and catch yourself and become more grounded and more honest and more forthright and more truthful, you're literally pruning the tree in order to bring that weakness down under a place where you can manage it. It makes you more generous with others who fall, and the humility you experience creates a vacuum in you that draws in greater grace. Remember Joseph Garlington years ago saying grace is the power of God that comes into you. It's the divine enablement of God. He said it's like Coca-Cola. When you click that lid on the can, that sound is the vacuum of air going in. When you humble yourself, when you deal with your own humanity, when you discover your own vulnerability, you create that grace suction that pulls in the divine energy of God to enable you to overcome. So dealing with a weakness, dealing with that meant, again, Jesus hired Judas in the area of his gifting. And he wasn't setting him up for failure. He was setting him up with a test, just like all of them will be tested in the area of their assignment. So God gives you the grace. Grace comes to the humble. Grace is the word that describes a current of divine energizing power from heaven. A great definition of grace isn't cutting me slack. The definition of grace is a current of divine energy. Jesus was filled with grace. It wasn't because God gave him slack. It was because he had divine energy. As you draw near to God, he gives you grace, and his energy creates something in you to overcome. Heaven creates a table for you right in the presence of your enemies. You occupy until he comes. You don't run from the pressure. Heaven is wanting you to win. You'll never meet a temptation you don't have the ability to resist. You'll never be held back from a promotion because you might be tempted. In fact, your weakness and your strength are so intertwined that you're surely going to meet temptation as you advance up the mountain. But don't let the temptation stop you. And if you stumble, because the Bible says we all easily fall, then get back up, learn from what happened, and judge yourself rightly, and you'll be able to learn from it, produce a grace in you and an authenticity. You'll be a real human being instead of a Sadducee, and you'll champion other people getting up the mountain. How powerful for the new year. When you see people fall, remember, God puts people in a place of promotion, knowing that they'll be tested in the thing of their greatest strength. I want you to go right now to lancewallnau.com/New Year or call 1-800-910-6349. and get our 4-part series on favor, and it's for your gift of any amount. Bye-bye, and God bless you.
Happy New Year, y'all.
Happy New Year, y'all.
Yes.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world.